Thank you for coming. We got a great day for it. And my name is Lauren Bernard. I am one of the co-campaign managers with Ben Kelley, and we're very excited to be doing this. This is something we've been hoping for a really long time. So, and the first speaker we have this afternoon, is Lisa Redding, who is a math teacher at BHS, longtime math teacher, phenomenal educator, former dean, and we're so pleased that she is going to be with us today. Let's give a hand for Lisa. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. The excitement and positivity in this room gives me hope. I'm Lisa Redding, currently math teacher and associate dean at BHS, where I've been for the past 24 years. I am a graduate of Brookline High School, and I'm a parent of PSB students for the past 15 years. That's important. I know how difficult these past few years in the public schools of Brookline have been, culminating in our current budget crisis. I have never seen PSB in such a state. But today we look to the future and a better Brookline. Today we look to Dr. Robert Weintraub. Dr. Bob, who I first met as my graduate school professor at BU almost 30 years ago, and then went to work for him at BHS, clearly has the resume that makes him the strongest candidate for Brookline School Committee. But it's not his resume that makes Dr. Bob the best candidate. Dr. Bob is a creative problem solver, a relationship builder, an active listener. He is literally a boots on the ground leader. During his tenure at BHS, he logged many hours in those boots, walking the halls, so he could talk with students and staff, be a visible presence, and be in community with us. He knew that this was the only way to really understand how well our school was operating, to take the pulse of the student body, and to meet the needs of our teachers and administrators. I know that Dr. Bob will continue to lead on school committee in this way: boots on the ground, listening to what the schools need, and figuring out the resources to meet those needs. So cast your vote for Dr. Bob Weintraub on Tuesday, May 6th. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce a longtime friend and former colleague of mine at BHS. He is also a phenomenal leader in person, who is the founder of the Calculus Project, an initiative that got its start at BHS in 2009 and has since supported over 10,000 students of color and low-income students to be in higher-level math courses in order to close the opportunity gap. Please welcome Dr. Adrian Mims.
I have my 1 hour speech right here. First of all, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Man, this is something. I love this guy. I think I need to just tell you a quick story about how I met Dr. Bob Weintraub here. I moved up here in 1994 from South Carolina, and I see this guy walking down the hall in cowboy boots, always optimistic, always smiling, knowing the names of all the students. And that was him every single day. What you saw is what you got. very, very authentic. And what I just want to just share with you some of my thoughts, and just so that you can get to know another side of Bob that you wouldn't know unless you were in the building. And Bob always made it a point to stop in. I started out as a Metco tutor, tutoring students in math and physics. I then became a full-time math teacher. I became an associate dean, a summer school director, and the dean of students. And that was over the span of 19 years. And during that time, I saw a man lead a school who was always steady, who was always consistent, and who held everyone accountable. And for him, education and schools were always about the students, always. That's how he made his decisions. When there were barriers for students to take AP classes, where they had to take tests and they have to jump through hoops to be able to get a seat in AP classes, Bob said, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna give all students unfettered access to AP courses. The teachers feared that the scores would drop. No, they actually increased, and the number of students who had access increased. We had a practice at Brookline High School where new kids would come to Brookline High School, and the heads of the department, they would go back and forth because they're looking at how many students are in their respective classes, and they didn't want it to go over 25 students in a class. And so while they're going back and forth, there were students who didn't have access or have a schedule for 2 or 3 days, and they'd sit out there on the bench. Bob saw that, and Bob said, no, kids over lids, and that's what they call it. We can't have it go over lid. Oh, the sky's gonna fall if we have 26 kids in a class instead of 25. Bob said, no, kids over lids. When students come here, we're gonna make sure they have access to a class. When students were struggling, Bob came up with tutorial. He made it such that every single student, I felt, and through my conversations, had a connection with at least one adult. Schools are about students. He also created the African American Latino Scholars Program, because when we have students who were inducted into the National Honor Society, it didn't reflect the rich diversity that existed in the student body. Bob is a problem solver. He wanted to fix that. And also, what some people don't even know, small number of people know, is, when I was introduced as the, founder of the Calculus Project. I will say that that project would not be in Brookline had it not been for Bob. It takes courageous leadership. It's gonna take a courageous leader to be on the school committee, to hold people accountable. And what happened when we had students who, the second year of the Calculus Project, when they were supposed to come to the high school, those students said, we don't feel comfortable taking honor level courses because students are in those classes, they don't really look like us, we don't have relationships. We built those relationships over the summer, and I wanted to make sure that we had a critical mass of students in those sections, and the research supported that. There were some teachers who refused to teach the class, and the head of the department didn't support it, because the concern was if you had too many kids of color in a class, you'd have behavior problems. Meanwhile, you would have sections that were 80% white. It got to Bob. Bob said, no, we're gonna make sure that every student feels comfortable in these honor and advanced level courses. So the data before was that we would lose 60 to 70% of black students by the second quarter who took geometry honors, who would drop down to geometry standard, because we made sure that they were in an environment that was comfortable, where they felt like they belonged and they had their peers. Zero. Not one student withdrew. That was because Bob created an environment that was comfortable and was just and right for everyone. So that's who we need on the school committee. I wish I lived in Brookline because I'd vote. So this is the best I can do. I'm going to come in, I'll do whatever I can to make sure he gets elected. And the last thing I just want to say, I got to give a shout out to Miss Lisa Redding and Megan Kennedy Justice, because when those teachers didn't want to teach those classes, it was Miss Lisa Redding who introduced me and Megan Kennedy Justice who said, we will teach those students. So without further ado, I think I'm introducing you, right? The man with the cowboy boots. I think I've said enough. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bob.
So my wife's in Florida at a tennis tournament, and she gave me a text this morning. She said, "Kick ass, Bob." And I wrote back to her, "Oh my. This is much bigger than I thought it was going to be." But thank you very much for coming. I guess I want to ask the dignitaries. There are a bunch of people who serve the town, and I don't want to miss anybody. So select board, school committee, candidates for those positions, please stand up, and at least we won't miss you, okay? So who's here? We got... Okay, there's a lot of people in this room that I really love, including my grandchildren, my children. I'm going to give a special shout out to James Cradle and Tony Cradle, who are my dear, dear brothers and sisters. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for being here. It's a beautiful day, and I appreciate that you're here. And I also want to shout out to my crazy campaign team. They are crazy, and they got me going in all this stuff. So I got Ben Kelley. Where are you, Ben? Please stand up. Lauren Bernard. And my treasurer, Beth Gilligan. Thank you. Okay, so one of the reasons I'm running for school committee is it's going to be my personal expression of resistance to the denigration and decimation of our public services and public servants. This is personal for me and my family. My sister, the brilliant Ellen Weintraub, and former chair of the Federal Elections Commission, was fired because she was a critic of Trump. Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. I want my progressive voice in the public square. I want to be in the room where it's happening, which is in the James Walsh School Committee room on the 5th floor of Town Hall. I'm a unique candidate for school committee. For almost 40 years, I've been working in the trenches of our public schools. I actually know a lot. When I watch the school committee meetings on Big, the local TV station, I always want to jump in and join the conversation. Vote for me, and I will join the conversation. As you all know, we have challenges in Brookline Public Schools. We have a fiscal challenge. We have a challenge to reverse the revolving door of leadership in our system, and I believe we need to find our academic center of gravity. I have many years of experience in each of these areas. So I managed a budget of over $30 million at Brookline High with a deep commitment to the teachers, to the paraprofessionals, to the counselors, to the social workers, to the custodians, to the cafeteria workers, to the secretaries, and the school leaders in the schoolhouse where teaching and caring for our kids happens. I also sat on the superintendent's senior cabinet where most of the fiscal decisions for the system were decided. Along with the alumni and members of our community, back in the day we launched the Brookline High School 21st Century Fund. We raised almost $10 million. So I know a little bit about money. We raised about $10 million over those years to support innovative programs like Adrian Mims' Calculus Project, the African American Latino Scholars Program, the Brookline High School Tutorial, Teachers Mentoring Teachers. All of these programs were created about 20 years ago. They're still here, and they're still thriving. So I'm proud of that. So when we experienced a very a serious, significant fiscal crisis early in my tenure at Brookline High School, I worked with the legendary superintendent of schools, James Walsh, and we decided to get into good trouble. We proposed a transformation of our administrative structure, changing the 60-year-old expensive house system to a slimmed-down dean structure. 4 housemasters, 4 house teachers, 4 secretaries, to 2 deans, 1 associate dean. That associate dean is James Cradle. He's sitting right there. And 2 secretaries. We saved about $500,000 when $500,000 was real money. We also required every administrator in the school, including me, to teach at least 1 class, saving an additional $200,000. We cut no teachers, and the kids continued to be well served. Regarding the academic center of gravity, Adrian talked a little bit about this, but I want to talk about United States History AP. Historically, when I showed up at Brookline High, we had about 47, 48 kids every year in advanced placement U.S. history. I thought that was far too few kids for that class. So, with our administrative team, we decided to get into some more good trouble, and we eliminated the barriers to enroll in AP courses. I couldn't complete some of the forms required to get into an AP class at Brookline High. I'm not kidding, really. We asked the teachers to embrace this mantra. This is important, you can do this, and we're going to help you. For the kids who some people thought maybe weren't qualified to be in an advanced placement class. Some of the department chairs believed that we were diluting and destroying the academic power of our AP courses. So here's some data that Adrian did refer to, but not in U.S. history, more in math. So when 47, 48 kids were taking U.S. history AP, and they took the AP test at the end of the year, the average score was 4.2. Soon after we changed those enrollment regulations, rules to get into the classes, we had 125 students in U.S. history AP, from 47, 48 to 125. Keep in mind that the number 4.2 was the average number on the AP test when they were 47, 48 kids. With 125 kids taking the test, the average score was 4.3. That's about the academic center of gravity of a school. Okay. Finally, by the way, I talked to Anthony Meyer, who's the principal of the high school yesterday, and I asked him how many kids were in U.S. history AP. 151. 47, 48, 125, 151. Challenging those kids at the highest level. Good work. Finally, the world of hiring and retention of faculty and leaders. Hey, I hired Paul Epstein. I hired Adrian Mims. I hired Lisa Redding. I hired Anthony Meyer. I hired Hal Mason. I hired a lot of people. And most of those people remained at Brookline High School in our school system for many, many years. With that stability, you can build a strong and dynamic organization. With that stability, you can build a strong family. The most important responsibility of the school committee is to hire, supervise, and evaluate the superintendent. I have hired, supervised, and evaluated hundreds of people. It's not about an annual performance review. It's about daily interactions between the supervisor and the supervisee. I know how to do that, and as member of a school committee, I will do that. Finally, over many years, I listened to many parents concerned about their kids. It's tough to raise teenagers. They were concerned about bad friends, drugs and alcohol, a pathetic academic work ethic. I listened carefully, did what I could to help, but often what I would say to parents is, they're not done yet. They're not done yet. And those words were kind of prophetic because later on, they righted their own ship and they became responsible adults, successful. And so they weren't done yet. So today, I'm speaking to you in the magnificent Brookline Teen Center created by the legendary Paul Epstein. And today, I am saying to you, Brookline, I am not done yet. I was hoping that was an applause line. So I want to thank you for coming, thank you for listening, and thank you for considering me as you cast a very, very important ballot vote for the Brookline School Committee. And now it is my great honor to introduce, to conclude this program, the amazing Paul Epstein.
Okay, I'm kind of tall and I don't have the teacher voice of Lisa Redding. She has the most amazing teacher voice, but is this okay? Can you hear me? Okay, great. And by the way, I really respect Bob's election committee, Ben and others, Lauren, but whose idea was it to have me go last? That was, okay. So a couple weeks ago, Bob called me and asked me, and by the way, I do think we have to pass a motion today that when, not if, but when he gets elected, his nameplate has to read Dr. Bob. It's only fitting. But you called me and you asked me if I would speak and say a few words and join Lisa and Adrian, my friends. And it was a really hard thing. I thought long and hard, what could I possibly say? How could I adequately convey just how ridiculously overqualified he is for this job? And I've known Bob from Bayside, that's Bayside, Queens, right, Bob? For almost 35 years. I sat in his office while he interviewed me for an open social work position at BHS sometime in the last millennium, 1999, I think. I sat in a conference room with him as he expertly rhapsodized about the BHS mantra of freedom and responsibility, while a yeasty adolescent sat nervously on his office couch at a suspension hearing. I have to stop there and explain yeasty adolescent. Bob needs to help me. You used to give a speech every year to the whole student body, and you quoted from a 1932 BHS yearbook or something, or? Yeah, yeasty adolescent. Yeah, he read from the 1932 Handbook of Student Behavior or something from BHS, and it called them yeasty adolescents. I've also sat with Bob at Fenway Park in some excellent Section 16 field box seats and some really bad right field corner seats, watching Red Sox games with him. And we have also sat, Bob, asses adjacent astride bike saddles while we rode the Pan Mass Challenge together several times. And don't worry, Bob, I'm not going to tell the story of what happened when we were staying on that massive ship in Bourne at Mass Maritime Academy the first night of the PMC. But I'm only detailing my Bob bona fides because they lend weight to my honest claim that there's not a single person alive that I'd rather have on the Brookline School Committee. He exudes a certain been there, done that aura without an ounce of arrogance or self-aggrandizement. In Lowell, in Brookline, and over down the street at ComAv at BU, Bob has immersed himself for 3 decades in every aspect of education. And during his legendary tenure as head of school at Brookline High School, Bob was the omnipotent and ubiquitous Jewish cowboy, greeting just about every student you already heard by name with a hug and a kind word. He unlocked the magic recipe for culture building among staff and students. The result, a large and complex urban suburban high school that felt intimate and comfortable in all the best ways. A faculty that felt seen, appreciated, and in sync with each other. A place that always stressed the importance of top-shelf teaching and learning, but never forgot that it's easier to achieve when the classrooms and common spaces are fun. And when I took 2 separate sabbaticals during my tenure at Brookline High, one to get serious about building this place and the other to run it for 1 year on an interim basis, I really missed Brookline High School tremendously. But I did learn something during those years about organizations, how they run and how they can flourish. My wife Saskia and I have a long-running, semi-jokey back-and-forth conversation about how nonprofit boards of directors, which when you think about it are really not that different than school committees, are funny things. It's a group of dedicated and selfless adults who come together to ensure the health and effectiveness of an organization. But it's really not necessarily a group that has ever actually had the exact experience doing the very things that the people who work in the system do on a daily basis. And of course, I'm not saying at all that you can't be a superb board member or school committee member without that particular item on your CV. And I'm not denigrating any members of the current school committee at all. But let's be honest, isn't Bob's life experience worth a heck of a lot in this situation? When thorny issues, as we're having right now, come up for debate on the 5th floor of Town Hall, I will rest easier knowing that Bob will be sitting in one of those very comfy-looking leather chairs on in that James Walsh meeting room. He's going to be putting every ounce of his vast experience and expertise into practice as he makes decisions and advocates for what is right and just. As Ayanna Pressley says, policy is a love language. Bob will read, speak, interpret, and generate that language with skill and caring. For that, and so many other reasons, he has my lifelong loyalty and my vote as a Brookline resident, and I hope you'll do the same. Thank you.
Okay, well, I didn't prepare anything because I didn't know I was closing, but now I'm closing. So thank you everybody for coming, for supporting Dr. Bob. It's been like amazing, right? Like, you know, because a few of us have been asking Bob for many years to run, and then once it actually happened, to just see like the outpouring of support and love that Bob has just, you know, earned and won over his like incredible career. So thank you to everybody who's, you know, supported Bob in this campaign and supported us, and you know, who's going to support us from now through Election Day. Now, the last thing I'll say is that, you know, running a campaign is not free. You know, we have these stickers and these signs, and we had to rent this room, and we have all the delicious food. And so I'll ask everybody, if you can, to contribute to the campaign. Obviously, every dollar of it goes towards getting Bob that seat that we all want him to have on school committee. You can leave a check here. We also have a QR code you can scan with your phone and give online. But it really makes a big difference in terms of reaching voters, right? Because, sure, we all know Dr. Bob, and probably most people in town do, but it's always good to give them a little extra nudge, right? To reach out and make sure that they know what's going on, and so that's what we're gonna do. So, thank you again, everybody, for coming. Thank you to Lauren and Beth for organizing this thing. I was very minimally involved in that part, so they did an amazing job. Thank you to Bob for running. Thank you to Paul, Adrian, and Lisa for, you know, their amazing remarks. And everybody have a wonderful day, and thank you so much.